Bring in Jeffrey Fischer, who's a retired U.S. Air Force colonel who served 7 combat tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, as well as the Balkans. His final assignment was a senior position over at NATO Special Operations Headquarters in Belgium. He joins us now from Vienna. Colonel, good to have you on the show. I want to begin by asking you if you are worried that first, this massive attack on Russian forces that allegedly killed 400, they're saying it's 89, according to the Kremlin. And then you're seeing this retaliatory strike by Russian forces, which by all effects is very large as well. This is going to deepen. This is going to perhaps drag this conflict into an ugly new phase.
No, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be with you. And your concern is correct, right? There's going to be fighting probably through the winter, and it's probably going to be very much like trench warfare. The air, from as an aviator perspective, what I find fascinating is, we're 11 months into this war, and neither side has gained air superiority. The air is still a contested battle space, which is phenomenal. And you're right, when one side's claiming hundreds of casualties, the other side claims another 100 of casualties. I think we have to be careful when we read those reports, because the audiences for those sometimes aren't necessarily the global community. Sometimes it's the Russian citizens. Sometimes it's Ukrainians, and there's a little bit of propaganda that goes into this war. Let
me ask you, this is a question that I've wondered for the better part of the last 11 months of this conflict. I mean, why hasn't a country that was formerly a world superpower not been able to enforce a superiority in terms of airspace over Ukraine? I mean, given the fact that you don't have any U.S. Planes there, yes, they are supplying weapons, but in essence, we're talking about Russia.
Yeah. So just yesterday on a Twitter space, it's been on for 11 months. It's called Maria Report, at Maria Report, and we were talking about this. And I flew in the Balkans, as you mentioned earlier, and during the Operation Allied Force, Serbia is about 1/7 the size of Ukraine. And if you look at the amount of firepower that NATO brought into there, we're talking 10 to 15 squadrons of aircraft, tanker aircraft, AWACS, multiple bases. I don't know if Russia would be able to sustain what NATO brought just into Serbia, let alone a country 7 times the size of that, and be able to gain some level of air superiority or supremacy over Ukraine. I think that's a little foolhardy to think that they could have done. Now, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong in my initial assessments of what was going to happen in this war, and I'm not alone. There's a good majority of us who expected, just like you, Russia to have a more substantial ability in this war.
Let me ask you about what you think is going to happen on the front lines in the eastern part of the country. Your opinion. I know that you said that you were proven wrong, but looking forward, I mean, the situation on the front lines really hasn't changed all that much in the past several weeks. There's been sort of an inch there, 2 inches here. Do you expect this to be the main narrative in the foreseeable months, especially as this winter continues?
Now, I think Russia's in trouble, and I'll tell you why I think Russia's in trouble. The ground's about ready to freeze, and when it freezes, Ukrainian soldiers have been well trained, far better trained than the conscripts that Russia's bringing in. I think Ukraine's ready to launch a major offensive in the middle of the winter when it's cold. They'll fight much better than the Russians will. And then the second problem that Russia faces is, as it's looking more and more like a paper tiger to the west, you're going to see nations like the UK, Germany, Spain, France start giving heavy weapons. I mean, it just came out reported today in the UK that they're looking at sending main battle tanks into Ukraine, which will be a game changer. Those nations don't need to have to maintain military reserves for fear of World War III. I mean, if Russia's defeated, there is no World War III, right? So, and I think there's a lot of politicians in Europe that are starting to realize that.
Okay. Colonel Jeffrey Fischer, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for talking to us here on the News Hour. I do appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for your time.